We're here to discuss IHSS changes that were enacted in the recent budget package. I'm the author of the bill that requires most of those changes, so I have some real specific and special concerns about these particular policy changes and how they're being implemented, which were originally intended to improve the program's integrity. This is really important to our state. IHSS provides essential services to over 460,000 very vulnerable Californians, elderly and disabled individuals who cannot live alone without care in their own homes. In his budget, the governor originally proposed eliminating 90% of the IHSS caseload through a variety of cuts and reductions. We, the legislature, said no to that proposal. It was one of our caucus's top priorities, and in lieu of making those cuts, the legislature agreed to many tough policy changes, many of which were contained in the two bills that really bring us here today. And at the time, it never occurred to me that we would have to be worried about the implementation of these proposals. And the reason is a real credit to the Department of Social Services, because traditionally, this department, which has had to deal with a number of politically polarizing issues and dealing with a number of significant changes in their programs, DSS has been known for its even-handed style and collaborative approach to solving these problems hand in hand with the counties. This, however, is very, very different. The effort to implement AB X44 and AB X419 almost seemed to me to be designed to create maximum disruption, chaos, and fear. And this is very, very different than the experience we've had in the past, and it's disturbing. This hearing today is to determine why this is happening and how we can best address the problems that have been created. As a legislator, one of my concerns is that the administration is using this chaotic process as a means to cut people off of IHSS and to prevent people from providing IHSS services, thereby indirectly accomplishing the program cuts that the legislature refused to approve. And I won't allow an indirect method of doing something the legislature absolutely said no to. The legislature will not tolerate that. When the 58 counties open for business on Monday morning, 2 business days from now, they will have to begin a new process for enrolling IHSS providers, or the computer systems will not allow the providers to get paid. That is extremely difficult to swallow here, that we're going to cut people off of benefits as of Monday if they can't comply in a system that is set up to not allow them to comply. And I want to believe that this is unintentional and accidental, and that we can resolve this with everybody in the room reaching an agreement as to how we can implement this in a reasonable, sane, and humane manner. Counties don't know what the process is going to be. They don't have the necessary materials to conduct the new enrollment process. They don't have the contracts or the resources to conduct the background checks. Guidance that's being provided by DSSS is in conflict with itself internally and often in conflict with current law. And in fact, I've been provided with a letter from DSS that says they can't comment today on one of the major provisions of the bill regarding background checks because of existing litigation. As an attorney, I understand that, but somehow the counties are supposed to implement the policy by the end of the week. Counties don't have the staff or the facilities to conduct the required orientations and the face-to-face interviews. They don't even have, in many cases, the necessary authorization by the Department of Justice to conduct fingerprinting. So it seems pretty clear that all 58 counties will be out of compliance on Monday morning, and that providers will not be paid, and that recipients will not get the services they are entitled to. Consumers and providers are afraid and they're confused, in part because of a letter that was sent out the week of October 5th. I've heard reports of thousands of people every day coming down to county offices, fearful that they're going to lose their care if they don't immediately comply. Basically, the letter has overwhelmed the county's infrastructure and ability to respond. Yet, this probably would have been avoided had there been a stakeholder process in place and had we dealt with this in a manner that we've dealt with similar kinds of issues in the past. And fear is a very common theme here, and this is something that is very worrisome to me. The tone of the letters, there's heavy anti-fraud rhetoric in the CD that went out. it plays more like an America's Most Wanted episode than a warm welcome to the IHSS program. And so this hearing is posing the question, are we trying to root out fraud from bad actors, or are we trying to intimidate providers from providing services and recipients from receiving services? And as I've said before, why does this effort differ so dramatically from DSS's past history of success? Is it an accident? Is it because DSS is weakened by furloughs and staff turnover? Is it intentional? As I said, a backdoor mechanism to do what the legislature said we would not allow. And I'm hoping for an answer before we leave today, as well as a solution to the mess. Over 800,000 consumers and providers will be impacted, and we owe it to them and all Californians to get it right and to do it right. And before we go any further, I want to take one more moment to comment on one reason why I think these particular bills may have caused such chaos, and that's the process from which they came. 2 days ago, Speaker Bass suggested that the Big Five process was being overused in determining policy. And this hearing today illustrates one reason why I believe she was absolutely correct. The agreement for the IHSS changes that we're here talking about today were contained in bills that were negotiated in the Big Five process. They were the result of a deal that was reached in a back room by a small group of people that had very little knowledge of how the IHSS program really works. And I would also add that they probably had very little knowledge of the history of IHSS and why we have such a program. We have this program because decades ago, California as a state decided we were no longer going to institutionalize our disabled and our elderly citizens in state hospitals and nursing homes. We decided to enable them to remain in their homes. It's both more humane and less expensive. IHSS was developed as a program to keep people out of institutions and in their homes. Ironically, the method by which these bills are being implemented will result in IHSS services being denied, and these same folks will end up institutionalized. Thus, we come full circle. And in the meantime, we cause enormous amounts of human suffering. So in this room today, we have literally hundreds of experts on IHSS, hundreds of years' experience collectively, but there's only a handful of people that probably saw the bill before it was actually enrolled. And so it shouldn't be surprising that now on the back end, we've got to do the effort that we should have done on the front end. It's going to need some changes to make sure that it works, and yet no one seems empowered to make these changes. So I'm hoping that these changes will be agreed upon here today and that we can all leave the room on the same page and knowing what we're going to do from here. But it also provides the best example of why we need to craft policy in an open, transparent process with stakeholders having influence in the process and people with expertise having influence on the process.